According to a new report published in the New England Journal of Medicine. For more on these findings, we're joined now by the report's co-author, Haider Warraich. We certainly appreciate you coming on here to talk about this. So you found that nearly a third of natural deaths happen at home, slightly greater than the number of deaths in hospitals. What do we think is behind this trend?
So I think there's a couple of reasons why this trend has changed. One is that I think that over the last few decades, we have seen a real cultural shift in which increasingly people want to demedicalize the end of life and either reduce the amount of invasive procedures they receive at the end of life, or at least in this paper we found that they increasingly want to be able to die at home the way we have since our entire histories, other than these past few decades. The other reason has really been the growth of the hospice, the home hospice industry, the home hospice movement, because that really is the main service that can help support patients spend the end of their lives at home. So I think it is a combination of both more patients wanting to reclaim the end of life, so to speak, and be able to spend it in a familiar environment, but also having the additional support of hospice for allowing patients and their caregivers to be able to do that.
Hospice care, obviously much more widely available these days, but does hospice offer a wide enough array of services to help everyone in their final days?
So I think that's a really, really key point. And I would say that for the most part, for many patients, hospice does exactly that. It provides both patients and caregivers the support they need to be able to spend their last few months of life at home. But at the same time, there are many patients for whom hospice may not be enough. And primarily because the amount of money that we pay hospice is very, very limited. So that limits the amount of services that they can support, that they can provide for patients, but also the caregivers who are now becoming the frontline people taking care of these patients. So I think for the most part, hospice is able to do a good job, but moving forward, I do think that these findings should help us increase the amount of support we provide patients, caregivers, and also the hospice programs that help them.
Okay, and as we wrap up here, how prepared do you think a lot of families out there are to care for their loved ones who are prepared to die at home?
So hospice and physicians and nurses, they do a good job of preparing, many patients and caregivers. But I think I've talked to many caregivers who've had this experience, and I've really seen the spectrum. There are many people who really, really struggle with being able to support their loved ones at home. Many of these loved ones eventually decide to transfer the patient to a hospital or some type of other facility, but many of them can have a really bad experience at home, and that can really be quite traumatic. So I do think that there are many patients whose needs are not being met by our current end-of-life care system, and I do think that these findings should help force us think about, well, how can we best support patients and caregivers who do choose and who do want to die at home.
Yeah, really important conversations that a lot of families certainly need to have. I really appreciate your insight on this, the co-author of this study, Haider Warraich. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.